Good morning, good afternoon to everybody around the world. Very excited to have for our all partners meeting here today. And our first one as Enable, which is very exciting as we've, now officially spun out, being our own publicly traded organization. We have an exciting event today, and I want to premise it a bit, I think, in advance. I'm actually down in San Antonio, just coming off the heels of an exchange event. The conversations that I've had this week have all been around security best practices, security of vendors, security of products. We all know that it's top of mind. And the interesting component was this concept that there's no such thing as absolute security, but how do we continue to mitigate our risk? And that's part of why we wanted to bring you the all partners meeting today. I think it's important. I think it's a discussion that we're all having, and I think we have the right content for you. And I believe that you're going to garner a lot of insight today, not only from us as your partner, within your business, but as well from industry experts who are going to be speaking to you as well about some of those best practices and things that you should be looking for. To quickly take everybody through the agenda, I know we've started a little bit late. Apologies on that, but that was to allow a lot of people coming in at the same time. Again, I'm just going to really take you through all of the different speakers now, and then we're going to get kicked off with it. But first, who we're going to have is John, and John's going to take you through the business update. What are we doing? How are we investing in securing our products? And some of those thoughts on what's happening in the industry today and what we're doing as a business and how we're making those investments. We're then going to have Richard Clark, and I'll give a little bit of info on him in a minute. And Richard's an industry expert who's going to really come and talk about, what's happening out there in the market and best practices for you within your organization. We're then going to jump into the product security update. That'll be handled by Mike Adler. He's our Chief Technology and Product Officer, and Jim Mulkey, who's our Senior Vice President of Product Development. Then we're going to have Dave McKinnon come in. Dave's our CISO, and Dave's going to take you through the infrastructure security update and what we're doing around our incident response and obviously all of those security notifications, which we know is important to all of you. And I'm excited to have all of you meet, Dave as well. And then we're going to have Mike Adler come back with Matt Turner, and they're going to take you through the security roadmap and RMM platforms as well. And then we'll come back to me and we'll do a quick closeout, and we'll ask you to give us a rating on the overall session. You will hear, as I mentioned, from Richard Clark, and Richard really is internationally renowned whenever it comes to cybersecurity. Being really that first cyber czar, and his insight, I think that you'll hear today, will give you thoughts and the ability to really think into your own business about what are you doing, what should we be thinking about, and really what's, those areas of best practice within your organization. So again, I believe we have a very exciting event today. I think we're going to give you a lot of information that many of you have been looking and asking for, and we hope that we meet those needs for you. I am excited, though, of course, as well, to introduce John, our president of the newly spun out Enable Technologies. And so I want to hand it over to John. John, I'll give it to you now.
Thank you, David. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. Hopefully, you will be able to see my screen in 1 minute. All right, great. Well, listen, thank you for taking the time out of your busy days to invest in our partnership and to invest in our business. For the last 12 months, a little bit over 12 months now, I've been coming in front of you, talking to you about this spin, the separation from the SolarWinds business. I'm happy to report in March, hopefully you all know, we went from orange to purple. We call it the purple and black here internally here, and we rebranded the company and the name in March of 2021. On July 20th, we actually completed the spin on the 19th, and on July 20th, we began trading as a completely independent company. 60 of us, we refer to ourselves, by the way, as Enableites, and with the idea there that it's enabling IT. So there's 1,300 Enableites strong. 60 of us were I had the good fortune to go down to the New York Stock Exchange that day to go and have the closing ceremony. Well, quick story, they handed me this gavel, and before any time a company goes public, when they start trading, they hand the gavel to the CEO and they tell them to whack the bell. And they said, John, hey, give it a good whack. And I said, are you sure? And they said, look, we've only seen this thing break once or twice in 17 years. Give it a good whack. So I did. I gave it 3 good whacks. And on that 3rd whack, this gavel came apart. And they did a little interesting piece on it in the Wall Street Journal. And I looked at them and I told them, said, hey, we do things a little bit differently here at Enable. We do things a little bit differently in the MSP industry. And that is really what the spin is about. The spin is really because we believe that this is a different business model, that we need to do things a little bit differently here. The purpose of the spin, I've said this before, but it's worth repeating, is what I refer to as the F word. And that F word in this case is focus. We believe that as a separate business, we can focus better on your needs, on our partners' needs, and we can focus on our people. And by focusing on our partners and focusing on our people, then we can deliver a better result for the business and for our shareholders. And so that's really what this is about. People have been asking me when I talk to analysts, when I talk to Wall Street, when I talk to folks in the industry, when I talk to you, our partners, John, how is it going to be different? It's really going to be different because of this focus, and in particular areas where we are increasing our level of investment. We are increasing our level of investment in our partner success organization. We've got now hundreds of folks in our business that are non-quota bearing folks. Their singular purpose is to make sure you have what you need to be successful. And they're there to talk to you about the different technologies. They're there to talk about different business strategies, different sales and marketing strategies. Are you automating your business? How do you compare against others in the industry? What are the best MSPs on the planet doing? We are able to see that, harness that, and hopefully share that with you so you can improve your business. So you'll see an increased level of investment in our partner success teams, number one. Number two, you will continue to see, and you'll hear from Mav and Mike Adler later on today, you will continue to see us increasing our level of investment in R&D. We've been talking to you, we heard you loud and clear. You want to make sure, first and foremost, from all of your vendors, that the products that you're using today that you can rely on, that the products that you can work on are helping you with that productivity curve. And we're also making sure that we can pull all this in a very powerful platform, because we recognize how busy you folks are. And if we can do that in a single pane of glass and to automate and leverage the powerful automation tools that we have, you can do your jobs. Your teams, just as importantly, can do their jobs more efficiently, more profitably. We also know that we need to help with this digital evolution that's occurring out there. And that digital evolution is happening faster and faster and faster every day. You're at the forefront of it. We need to make sure we're providing you with the right products to help with that digital evolution. Lastly, Dave kicked it off, and he's right. We know that security is top of mind. We recognize that we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can. We'll talk about that in a little bit, to make sure that we're investing. Rest assured, we are investing a significant amount here at Enable on a security and from all different elements of security, our internal security, how we're building our products, and we'll be talking a little bit about that. But that is top of mind. That level of investment continues to increase, and you'll hear from Dave Mack, our new CISO, in a little bit. Why? Well, we believe that focusing on those 3 areas is our best way to ensure that we're living to our true North Star, to our true mission. And that mission has been, for the last 20 years, to really empower you and to make sure you have everything you need to be successful. We recognize that your jobs are harder today than ever before. And unfortunately, folks, it's only going to get more complicated. It's only going to get harder. Why? Because now your employees and your customers' employees are working from anywhere. They're always on, they're accessing their data, they're accessing their systems, they're accessing their mail from anywhere. and they're accessing this from, my goodness, my camera was off. You couldn't even see me. Did you not even, you weren't even to see the whole gavel thing. I broke the gavel. I showed you the gavel. It came apart. I just got a note that you weren't able to see me. My apologies for that. But hopefully you're able to hear me nice and clear. This is the gavel. I did break it. But anyway, our mission really, again, is to make sure that you're empowered, because your employees, your customers' employees, are accessing things from everywhere and on anything. We recognize that it's much more of a proliferated world than it's ever been, whether it's Windows operating systems, Windows devices, Apple devices, Cisco devices, Google Chrome, you name it, you're being thrown at it. And you're also being thrown a tremendous amount of diversity as it comes to folks pushing more and more workloads to the cloud, standing up these different instances. What we've seen is that small, medium enterprises have actually adopted SaaS applications at a faster clip than Fortune 1000 companies. That presents a new challenge for you. That presents a new problem for you to be able to monitor, manage, and secure. Ultimately, your job is to make sure that these small, medium enterprises must be productive, that they can collaborate with each other, and most importantly, that they are secure. And when we think about security for us, given where we are in the ecosystem, and given where you are in the ecosystem, we are effectively in that supply chain. What does that mean? That means we have effectively an asymmetrical impact on the ecosystem. We recognize it. We see where the bad guys are focused. We know that we are a target. We know that you are a target. And for you, when you think about your security assessment, it needs to start with the technology partner that you're leveraging every day to do the job that you need to do. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what our area of focus is and what we're doing. Interestingly enough, we had two pretty big events happen to us over the last 12 months. Number one, it's been well documented of what happened with the Orion incident and that nation state attack on our colleagues at SolarWinds. And then number two, the spin. And interestingly, as a unintended byproduct, both of those events have really given us an opportunity to have an advantage as we were to spin out. What do I mean? As part of the SolarWinds incident, and just to repeat, and you all know, and we've been pretty consistent with this, our products were not compromised, but we were definitely impacted. We had folks, we know that you were impacted, we know that you had to explain this to your customers, but as a byproduct, what ended up happening is we had to do deep analysis of our products, review the code. Still now 8-9 months later, we're still happy to report that our products were not compromised, but we were impacted. We took all those learnings from the SolarWinds team, and the CEO of SolarWinds, Sudhakar, and his team did a great job of educating us, but also educating the industry as to what you need to know about supply chain attacks. We took that knowledge and we built that into our new systems. I mentioned the spin. The spin created for us a fantastic opportunity to build anew. We've effectively had to build a new house, so to speak, as it relates to our environments and our email system and our share folders and all these other bits, the way we're accessing our information with MFA. And we've now adopted all the latest and greatest technologies for our own environments. We're looking at and making sure that we continue to invest in the best tech stacks and tools. And so the spin actually provided this great opportunity. We didn't need to transition anything over. We were able, as part of the spin, to build anew. And given what happened with SolarWinds and this opportunity for the spin, we believe that gave us a head start to make sure that we do everything we can do to make our environments, our tech stacks, and our tools secure. And that's a big part of it. Secondly, we've taken a step back and taken a look at all of our processes, making sure that we're doing everything in this more of the secure by design mindset. You continue to hear us talk about that. And lastly, and just as important, and sometimes something that's overlooked, we began really investing in bringing in additional people. You'll hear Dave Mack, our new CISO, talk later today to help us drive the culture. So security is very much core to us. It's been so. We've had the benefit of being, one, very close to a couple of different incidences, and number two, the spin presented a tremendous opportunity for us to build systems anew and rethink and build things in the 2021 or 2022 form with this concept of a secure by design. What does that mean for you? And you'll be hearing this throughout today. Security means for you, given the fact that you're in the supply chain, and yes, you know you're in supply chain, you have that asymmetrical impact on your customers, whether you're managing 10 small medium enterprises or 500 or 5,000 small medium enterprises. And we know some of our bigger customers have this challenge and take this very seriously. You have a couple of different layers. You need to make sure that your teams are using the best practices, that they're leveraging the right protocols, that they're leveraging the right ways to access your information, their information, and that needs to be top of mind and drive into your culture. So you internally need to have a lot to do. Make sure that you're practicing. Best practices, the word in there is practice, and make sure that you are practicing. We are practicing here at Enable. Make sure that your team is practicing the proper hygiene. Make sure that you're practicing for potential events. So if and when a bad thing happens, you are prepared and you know exactly what you need to do and who needs to do what. Very important. Number two, your customers. Pass that on to your customers, that culture to your customers. Your customers need to make sure that we've been preaching since, for 5, 6, 7 years now, this concept of a layered security approach. Unfortunately, there's not one pill that can make us all secure. We need to go about this with a layered security approach. Unfortunately, especially given where you are in the supply chain, backup and disaster recovery is not enough. You need to make sure that you're thinking about the NIST framework and making sure that you and your customers have technology, processes, and people in place to talk to all elements of the NIST framework. And the only way to do that, to better ensure yourself, is to have that layered security approach. Lastly, we recognize that you have a choice. I hope that when you're looking at a choice for which vendor that you need to trust on to bet your business, and you are betting your business with these vendors, because we recognize that we are the central nervous system to your business and to your success, that you choose your vendors wisely and that you choose vendors that are willing and able to make sure security is top of mind. We recognize that your business is difficult. We recognize that it's a very complicated business. We actually spend a lot of time thinking about you. In fact, we think about you every day. And when we think about you and how you can have a better business, how you can achieve the goals that you want for you personally, for your business, for your employees, we think about it in this construct. And what I refer to as my XYZ strategy. We want to make sure that we are helping you manage more. The world is changing, it's ever evolving. We want to make sure that you can manage devices of all different types and applications of all different types and workloads. Whatever the workload is, you need to be there. We recognize that the workload has gone from the closet to the cloud, and we want to make sure that we can help you. And that's why we're doing these partnerships. That's why we're continuing to focus on this concept around manage more here at the top of the slide with Intune and Cisco and Apple. We also recognize that part of your business and how you can achieve your goal is to land more customers. Land those customers, retain those customers, and we've done a bunch of things over the last 12 months to make sure that your investment is there. Please take a look at the logos that you see on the screen. If you do not know or have not been exposed to what these things can do for you, reach out to your partner success team, reach out to me, john.pagliuca@enable.com. I will walk you through how these things can help you land new customers, keep new customers, and make yourself a better business. Please make sure that you are thinking about that. And lastly, I talked about land and retaining those customers. We know that you need to continue to add new services to your business. We have DNS Filter coming out later this year. We have our backup Office 365 offering, which has been a fantastic success for our MSPs. We're leveraging the TAP program. We want to be sure to be known as the vendor to help you where we want to matter, where it's the messiest for you. And that's been our focus, that's been our strategy. And we believe that if we keep this as our North Star, we help you with this XYZ strategy, you will be successful. We will be successful. So thank you. Thanks for your time. I'm going to wrap my section up, and in doing so, I'm going to have the privilege. Still can't believe I didn't show you the gavel. I did this big swing and everything, but I have the privilege to introduce Mr. Clark, as David mentioned, but I'll just give you a little bit more in his bio. Richard Clark is really world-renowned and an expert internationally on cybersecurity. He was the first cybersecurity czar, the cyber czar for the U.S. government. He actually wrote the national strategy for cybersecurity. He served in the White House for 11 years, advising 3 presidents in a variety of different roles. He is the author of 9 books, and that's pretty impressive onto itself. One of them is his New York Times #1 bestseller, Against All Enemies. And Mr. Clark, most notably, and today is the CEO of Good Harbor Security, which is a security risk management shop that's advises companies of all sizes and shapes. So with that, I will. It's my honor and privilege to introduce Richard. Richard Clark, please take the mic.
Thank you, John, and good morning. This is a great opportunity to step back from the day-to-day noise and ask ourselves what's really going on in the world of security, and what does that mean for us. So let's start with what's going on, who's doing it, what's happening, and then put that into a context of how do companies deal with the current threat environment. As John mentioned, I've been doing cybersecurity for over 2 decades. Never before now has it been the front page story. Never before now has the President of the United States picked up the phone and called the Russian president over cybersecurity. Never before have we had long lines of cars trying to get gasoline because of a cybersecurity incident. And what does this all mean for you? Well, it means you have to think of 2 different kinds of actors. They're the state threats, notably the Russians and Chinese, also the Iranians and North Koreans. Those 4 governments are routinely hacking American companies. Then there's a separate group of people who are criminal gangs, who are doing it for the money. And if you put the 2 of them together, their motivations are such: collecting intelligence, preparing to disrupt our infrastructure, getting money. Their motivations are such that they cover almost the entire gambit of American companies. But the distinction between these 2, the distinction between the state actors and the criminal groups, is blurring. And that blurring is important as we think about the threat to American companies. The techniques that used to be only available to states, the sophisticated kind of attacks, are now becoming available to the criminal groups, and they're using them. Why is this happening? 2 reasons. One, some of the people who work in the Russian and Chinese and other governments during the day are going home, and at night and on weekends, helping out cyber criminal gangs. So they're actually state people with a little action on the side. And the second reason it's happening is that criminal gangs are making so much money on cybercrime that they're able to hire their own R&D departments. We know that they are paying PhDs in computer science to develop new attack techniques for them, just like a government would. So the attack actors are blurring, and the kinds of attacks are getting more and more difficult to deal with. Let's just quickly walk through the evolution of the kinds of attacks we've seen, beginning back in the 90s. The attacks then were crash and run. They'd break into your system, they'd make a lot of noise breaking in, they'd steal whatever they could steal, and they'd exfiltrate it. if that was intelligence information, if it was credit card information. It was over quickly. If you didn't act quickly, you were too late. And nonetheless, the actions were damaging, very damaging in some of the intelligence losses. Then by the time the millennium rolled around, we start seeing a new kind of attack. And this is mainly from state actors. We start seeing a persistent attack. That's how we get the APT designator. Russians, the Chinese, others would be breaking into networks in a very stealthy way. They don't want to be seen. They do everything they can to turn off security systems, to wipe logs, to assume the identity of systems administrators so that they can stay in the network in case they want to do something in the future. And while they're there, they can exfiltrate data that's not noticed because they turn off all the alarms. From there, in the last 5 years, we've moved to ransomware. Ransomware, purely a criminal enterprise, although we suspect the Russian government and the North Korean government have used ransomware as well. But ransomware being a technique that can get in any number of ways, but once it's in, two things happen now. Initially, it was only they encrypted your network, but now it's they exfiltrate the data, and then they encrypt your network. So they have a double ransom. If you don't pay them, you don't get your encryption, you can't run your network, and worse yet, they paste your sensitive information on Pastebin or some website. On top of all of that, what we have seen in the last 2 years is the growth of the indiscriminate attack. We've had cases of it in the past where people got into the supply chain. In fact, we've gone back and found cases of supply chain attacks going back 15 years. But major indiscriminate attacks by getting into the supply chain have only been significant in the last 2 or 3 years. Where are we with all of this? Well, President Biden did call President Putin, and he complained about a particular criminal group, the REvil ransomware group. And what he's apparently said, according to my contacts, is this group is on your territory. It's in Russia. You know who they are. If you don't shut them off, I'll shut them off. We'll violate your sovereignty. We'll come into your networks and we will fry their computers. So either, Vladimir, you do it or I do it. That appears to have worked up to a point. That particular criminal enterprise is no longer doing ransomware using that software that they were using before. Ransomware is still continuing. Is it the same group? We at least know it's different software. But the threat is real, the threat is continuing of ransomware, and the threat is continuing even more of the indiscriminate supply chain attack. So what does this mean for you? If you've been going to cybersecurity conferences for the last 20 years, you've heard the old joke 1,000 times that there are only two kinds of companies. Those that have been hacked and know it, and those that have been hacked and don't know it. That joke is so old that there's a whole cottage industry about who invented it and who said it first. It was true that there were only two kinds of companies. But in doing the research for the book, The Fifth Domain, my co-author, Rob Konaki, and I discovered to our surprise that there is a third kind of company. And that's the kind of company you want to be. The third kind of company is the company that doesn't get its name in the newspaper for being hacked. The kind of company that in fact doesn't get hacked, or if it does, doesn't get hacked successfully, is able to deal with whatever gets in. We interviewed CISOs and CEOs of a number of these third kind of companies. And what do we find? They have something in common. In fact, they have 4 things in common. And I think if you get these 4 things right, you can be one of those successful companies. First, governance. The system is set up so that the person in charge of security, the CISO or the security director, doesn't report to the CIO. That's a conflict of interest often. No, the person in charge of security reports to the chief operating officer or to the CEO and has the right, if she feels that she's not being given enough money, or if proposals she's making are not being approved, she has the right to take it to the board. And the board, and this is key, the board of directors has someone literate in cybersecurity who constitutes a cybersecurity committee of the board. Time and time again, when companies have been hacked and we've talked to them afterward, the CISO will say, well, if only I had approval of the thing I wanted to do. And the CEO will say, I never know you asked for that. That kind of communications breakdown doesn't occur in the successful companies. So getting the governance right is the first and most important thing, I think, because it leads to the second thing, which is the spend, which is the budget. There are basically 2 clusters of companies when it comes to security spending. And I know this is a rough measure. It's not a precise metric, and there are all sorts of definitional problems. But what we found was the companies that were hacked were spending 3, 4, maybe even 5% of their overall IT budget on security. And the companies that were never hacked or were able very quickly and successfully to deal with hacks, they were spending 10% or more. We found one company at 17%, 10% or more of their IT budget on security. Now, that's indicative of 2 things. One, that the company takes it seriously, or else they wouldn't authorize that level of spend. And 2, the company realizes that the threat is so fast and so quickly changing that you constantly have to buy new devices, buy new software, modify what you've got, do R&D. This is an ever-changing landscape, and you have to pay to play. So governance, spend. The third is culture, and John mentioned this, having a corporate culture that everybody in the company, if it's a manufacturing company, everybody on the assembly line right down to the loading dock, not just the guys in the white collars up in the office, everybody in the company knows about security, thinks about security, sees security reminders on the wall in their emails, is constantly tested to see if they'll fall for phishing, is asked in every software build, what have you done about the security? Where security is built into everyone's job. That security culture, where we're willing to sacrifice speed, we're willing to sacrifice profit in order to have a successful security environment. And the fourth, unfortunately, the fourth qualifier of what makes a company a successful company, I said it's not just that they don't get hacked, but if they get hacked, they can deal with it quickly. The fourth thing is being prepared. Being prepared to jump on the attack as soon as it's identified. And to do that, we at Good Harbor think you need 5 components of preparation. The first is obviously the incident response team. And that's not just people in the company, but it's also people outside on retainer. A lawyer who really knows how to do this stuff. A PR firm who really knows how to do this stuff. A forensics team that will come in and help you clean up the network. All on retainer in advance. I know that's money, but that's what you have to do. Have an incident response team inclusive of the outside experts. Have them identified well in advance. And the second part of it is have a plan. Have a plan that is specific about who does what, who contacts whom. Pages and pages of, and I mean pages, written document in a binder, old school, because your network may be down and you may not be able to go online to find it. A detailed incident response plan, and if you don't think you can develop that, hire somebody to come in and do it for you. And then the third component, exercise it, exercise it, exercise it. It's like a football team. They can have a great game plan, but if they never train and they never exercise, they won't be able to execute that game plan. And there are two kinds of exercises that you need to think about doing. One, the tabletop exercise, where all of the players in your IR team walk through a realistic crisis, a realistic threat, and are very open about, hey, I don't know how to do this, or hey, what do I do now? So that you learn together, so that when you have a real crisis, a real breach, it won't be the first time you're testing. It won't be the first time you're tested. It won't be the first time that you try to implement the plan. The second kind of exercise is what in the military they call a field exercise. So this tabletop exercise, TTX, and field exercise, FTX. What's the FTX? The FTX is taking the backup and making it work. Bringing things down, taking the backup, and seeing if it works. That is the fourth component. Recovery. Having essential, minimal essential backup offline that will get you up quickly if you're ransomed, get you up quickly if there's some other sort of attack. To have that and use it, test it, bring it back offline. Store it offline, and don't just store the last week or the last month. Keep backups that go back at least 2 months, because we know that, particularly with ransomware, the attacker gets into the backup intentionally, so that when you bring the backup down, poof, you're ransomware again. Long, old backups, minimal essential database. And the last piece, the fifth piece of this preparedness, is having secure communications. I'll give you a quick war story. You may remember when the North Korean government attacked Sony Pictures over a movie that they didn't like about their dear leader. I showed up at the Sony Pictures lot the next day. Nothing worked. The guard at the gate couldn't give me a pass to get in. He just said, go in. I don't know if you're on the list or not, just go in. And when we got in, the phones didn't work. The printers didn't work. The laptops, the desktops, the iPhones, nothing. Nothing worked. And therefore, Sony Pictures couldn't communicate. Couldn't communicate with its New York headquarters, couldn't communicate with its Tokyo headquarters, couldn't communicate with its employees, because everything had been wiped clean. A wiper attack, which is even more insidious than a ransomware attack. A wiperware attack where they just take all the software and delete it over and over again so you can't recover it. What that taught me was, as part of the preparedness exercise, you need to have backup communication systems. You need to have a stealth network, if you will, that you can turn on, that the attacker doesn't know about, doesn't have your name on it, that you can mount minimal essential communications and minimal essential functionality on the web, of the different website, and to have communications with your employees. So an IR team, internal and external, an IR plan, exercise, both TTX and FTX, minimal essential recovery database, and a stealth communications network. That's our recommendation to our clients, and we're giving it here to you to try to think about how that applies to you. Our goal here is to make you one of the third kind of company. The kind of company that, yeah, maybe gets hacked, but it's really hard to get in. And when it is hacked, knows what to do for its customers, for its clients, for its employees to get back up again successfully. Working with a company like N-able, I think you're on the right path. Thanks for listening. It's been great to talk to you this morning.
Excellent. Thank you, Richard. That was absolutely fantastic. And you know, we really appreciate that insight that you provided. And I think that's invaluable, those 5 steps that you're going to look at in your businesses, folks. And we really appreciate you taking the time to provide that to our partners. I'm happy now. I'm going to hand it over now to Mike Adler and Jim. And they're going to take over and they're going to take you a little bit through some of what we've been doing on the product side. So Jim, Mike, I'll hand it to you.
All right. Thank you, David. Hopefully you can see my screen now. All right.
We can. You are good.
Great. All right. So I am joined by Mike Adler, who may add some commentary to the update. But what I want to do is give you all an update on our product security efforts. You may recall last February at the All Partners meeting, hopefully a lot of you were on that call as well, we laid out a Secure by Design program that we had implemented at that time. And I want to give you an update because we've made a lot of progress in the last 6 months or so against that plan. So just a quick reminder, you know, we kind of laid it out. You might recognize a very layered approach to this topic as well, but we kind of laid it out in 4 major work streams that we were going against. First one was around the internal environment, because obviously, you know, when you want to build secure code and deliver highly secure products, you have to be working in a secure environment to do that. You know, it needs to have, you know, strong password policies. You need to have threat detection deployed. You need to have MFA enabled, those kinds of things. I'll go into this in more detail. I'll go into each one of these in more detail, but I'm just kind of giving you the high level approach that we're taking to product security here. So the internal environment is important so that we're working in a clean, secure environment. Then we talk about our development environment itself, where the developers are doing their work. You know, are they, you know, running clean builds? Are they able to, you know, do we protect the code? You know, how we handle access rights, those kinds of things. And I'll go into more detail there again, as I said. Finally, or kind of most importantly, is around the development efforts themselves. So if I'm working in a clean environment, in a clean network, I'm working in a clean development environment, then I can really focus on delivering high quality, high integrity products with security built in. And so I'll talk to you a lot about you know, kind of this area where we've spent most of our time over the last 6 months or so, really focusing on improving the security posture of our products, really trying to be proactive in the way that we have approached security within the product development team. And then finally, we talked about Secure by Design itself, right? Which is the ultimate vision that we have around not just doing things securely, not just adopting secure practices, but building them into the way that we do everything through code, through automated, repeatable processes that are enforced through our standard build process and our secure development lifecycle. So I'll give you an update on that project as well. That's something that will, you know, probably never reach the end of, but we will continue to develop and strive for excellence in that regard. So drilling down a little bit into the internal environment, really, you know, at the time we talked in February, we talked about having, you know, spent a lot of effort on rotating passwords, improving our access security to the networks. John spoke, you know, about this a little while ago. You know, when we spun the company out, this was a huge opportunity for us to improve the security of our internal networks, our corporate applications, and all of the systems that we work on. And Joel Kimmer, who's our CIO, really took that as an opportunity to not just, copy and move, to a new environment, but to really start from and build from the ground up, with security being a priority for the new environment that we were going to be working in. And so, since the last time we spoke, that was a huge step forward for us, and I think has provided tons of security around the environment that we're working in. In addition to that, within our teams, we've looked at things like all of the keys, not just our user IDs and passwords, but all the keys that we use for IAM, for SSH, for certificates for signing our code, everything that we use from the standpoint of a password or a secret within our business. And we've reviewed all of that. We've remediated situations where we had secrets in our code. We've taken those out. We've rotated all of those keys. We put them on a regular rotation basis. So all of those passwords and keys that we use in the development and execution of our software have adopted best practices around frequent rotation, not putting it in code where it can be discovered by a potential hacker, and we've made great progress and have completely remediated all of those keys. We're adding scanning technology and use scanning technology to scan all of our code, and we're scanning code now as people are checking in, make sure that we don't regress any of those passwords. I mentioned the certificates. If you recall, back in December, we changed our certificates, and now as we rebranded ourselves and come out as a new entity, we're also issuing N-able branded certificates within our code, and those things are being rolled out. About half the products have already rolled out new N-able branded certificates, and over the next month or 6 weeks, the rest of the products will follow suit. So we will have again kind of rotated certificates and moved forward with with best practices, and within our environments, we've increased the use of multi-factor authentication. Then I want to talk a little bit about the development environment itself. So where our developers are working to write code and test code. Many of you are probably familiar with the notion of shifting left, right? Whether you're talking about bugs or you're talking about security, the earlier in the process of code development that we can identify and remediate any of those kinds of bugs, whether they be code bugs or security issues, the earlier we can do that in the process, the better it is, right? It's cheaper for us to get it done that way, but more than that, it gives us the opportunity to fix it the right way from the beginning. And so we've adopted more stringent practices, which are consistent with industry best practices for secure development lifecycle around doing design reviews and code reviews. So as we're designing new features, as we're designing new capabilities in our products, as we're writing the code for those, we have people who are not only doing design reviews to make sure that they're architecturally sound and that they're following the coding guidelines that we have, but they're also doing security reviews of all of those designs and all of that code as well. And then as code starts to come into our system, into our repositories, as people are writing code, we're using advanced scanning technologies to scan the code for any kind of vulnerabilities that could potentially be introduced, not only in our code, the code that we write, but also in any open source products that we use. So we use a couple products called Checkmarx and Whitesource that do that scanning for us, and we're proactively scanning all of our code consistently, even before it gets delivered into the product somewhere. We've implemented a lot of kind of best practices around least privilege access, around separation of duties, to make sure that developers in our repository, our code repositories, only have access to the code that they need to have access to. We make sure that developers have access to code, and that our DevOps team have authority within the production environment, and the developers don't access production, and DevOps doesn't really have access to the software itself. And that way, we introduce the separation of duty, which makes it much more difficult for any malicious activity to occur within our environment. And back in February, we talked about the initiative to move to clean rooms for our builds. So the idea there was, you know, in the face or in the wake of, you know, the new strain of supply chain attacks, we wanted to make sure that our builds were happening within new, freshly created environments in our cloud infrastructure. And so, you know, we have completed nearly all of that work, as all of our products have moved into clean rooms today. Basically, you know, we use infrastructure as code that creates a clean room. We run the builds and it tears it down. And so it's not something, you know, it's not an environment that just sits around. It can be tampered with in between. It gets built, you know, when we need it, it gets torn back down. And then when we're going to run the next build, it gets recreated using the original definition. It's all hardened as code, and so it's repeatable and it's automated. And that's a best practice around how you handle your build process within software development lifecycle. Let's see. Then I want to talk a little bit more in depth around the security and integrity of our products. So this is really where we spent as an engineering team most of our time over the last 6 months. We've made tons of headway here. The kind of heart and soul of this is around the vulnerability management system, right? So everything that we do, whether we're scanning code or doing threat modeling or pen tests or, you know, getting reports from external sources, all of that goes through this vulnerability management process. And that's the way we manage our backlog of all items that have anything to do with security. And we follow a industry best practice around CVSS scoring for all of those vulnerabilities. And we're constantly managing that and addressing all of the issues, but especially putting focus on anything that comes through and gets rated as a high or a critical vulnerability. So that's kind of the heart and soul. We, you know, really redoubled our efforts around vulnerability management reporting. We adopted earlier this year this threat modeling approach, where essentially if you're not familiar with that, there's, you know, kind of a industry standard that we follow there as well. But, you know, we get the teams together and they essentially evaluate different potential attack vectors that a bad actor could use to come in and try to attack either our product or our infrastructure or our build pipelines. You know, we think about all of those things, and we think about different potential ways that somebody could try to compromise those. And then the team itself, who, you know, these are the people who know the code and know the infrastructure and know the build pipeline, you know, inside and out, really evaluate, you know, where could there be weaknesses in that process and where could they potentially compromise us. And then they identify those, and we create tickets that we address as a result of that to remediate any potential threats. Even though they're not maybe real vulnerabilities yet, there are opportunities for us to improve. And so we follow that practice. We've executed that threat modeling against all of our products. We've done it against the infrastructure. We've done it against our CI environments, and we've built it in as a part of our regular practice. So now, as we're designing and building new products and new features, we are doing threat modeling at the very beginning, as I mentioned, kind of along with the security design reviews. We're doing threat modeling as part of that as well, so that we make sure that we identify things early and ship left on that. We're also continuing to conduct regular threat modeling sessions on each product. You know, it's also important that we address the infrastructure that our SaaS products run in, right? We've got products that run in AWS and Azure and in our own private cloud infrastructure, and we've adopted and implemented new scanning and advanced scanning techniques for all of those platforms. We've added security tools like GuardDuty from AWS and you know, a number of other tools that help us to monitor and scan our SaaS environments so that we make sure that where our products are running are secure. And we've consolidated all of that logging into a single logging tool across the enterprise. And I think Dave will talk a little bit more about that effort. Internally, we've established and have grown out this red team, which, if you're not familiar with that, I kind of call them the chaos creators. So the red team is an internal team that actively does, internal pen tests, internal reviews of our system, really seeks to identify potential vulnerabilities within our system from the perspective of someone who's inside and knows where the weaknesses potentially are. And so having that is a very bold step for us to create a team that's focused just on basically disrupting, and give them sort of carte blanche to go and attack whatever they think is a weakness, whether it's a product or a piece of infrastructure or a piece of network, whatever they think might have a vulnerability, they go and attack. So it's a very proactive step there. Continuing on, we've been conducting penetration tests against our products since 2015, but and over the last few years, we've done penetration tests for all of our product lines. But this year, we're taking it to another level. We feel like in the wake of everything that's changing in the security environment around us, it's important that we continue to get more thorough and more advanced in our testing. So we've adopted what we call what's called white box testing. This year, as we've gone to our vendors, our outside vendors, to do this penetration test, we've engaged with them on a longer, more thorough test, and part of that is we let them see the source code that we use in the products, and what that allows them to do is to take a much more thorough approach and a more informed approach about how they're going to test our products and do the penetration testing. And so that's happening right now, in fact. And our intent is, once we get the results back from those pen tests, which we expect to be more revealing than anything that we've done in the past, we will remediate those findings for anything that they find within our code. And then our intent is later this year to publish out the results of those pen tests so that you'll see that we've not only done them, but also remediated the results. We've implemented web application firewalls across all of our SaaS products, and we've just continued to proactively use the threat modeling and the code scanning to remediate a lot of potential vulnerabilities down the road. We've literally corrected hundreds of things within the code, make them more secure. I've got some examples down here where we've kind of thwarted some potential cross-site forgery exploits, some man-in-the-middle kinds of things. These are the kinds of attack vectors that we're modeling in our threat modeling. We're identifying where somebody could potentially get in and do something malicious, and then we go in and remediate it within the code before it ever becomes an actual vulnerability. And then, like in RMM, we've taken steps to sign scripts so that we make sure that we're verifying before we run a script that it's something that's been validated and it's not the work of some malicious actor. We've enhanced the security of the activation server in Central so that we better protect ourselves. And we made MFA available and the default in all of our products. And we are actively working on making multi-factor authentication mandatory in all of our products. There's still a couple of spots where an admin can turn it off or has the ability to change that setting from the default. But our intent is to eliminate the need to do that and to make MFA mandatory across all of our products later this year. So that's a proactive step that we're taking to not only protect ourselves, but hopefully protect you as our partners. And then lastly, I wanted to kind of talk about this Secure by Design initiative. I talked about the adoption of a software development, a secure development lifecycle. We started with the Microsoft SDLC. Our goal is to ingrain that through policy as code, through infrastructure as code, within the build systems and the code management systems that we have within the product or within our product teams. We started out by engaging with an outside security expert who has come in and conducted an assessment of everything that we do within our engineering development lifecycle. They've given us an assessment of that. They've identified areas where we can improve. And now we're working with them to not only implement those recommendations and and to implement our own designs around how to improve security and follow the best practices in the industry, but to build it into our code management, into our build pipelines, so that once we have this policy as code, once we have everything built as infrastructure as code, then there would be, I won't say impossible, but it would be very difficult for any individual developer to bypass any of that, or for anything to not follow the processes as we define them. And this new build pipeline, this new code management system that we're developing will be highly auditable, highly transparent. It'll be very secure, security built in from the beginning, with lots of dashboards and ability to see exactly what's happened, be able to log it and track it. So our goal there is that we implement everything, all of these best practices in code. We get all of our products onto the same build pipeline, the same code management process, and that it's all built through policies that can't be broken. And that's really kind of the end goal for us. We've made tremendous progress towards that. We've got lots of teams that are in the process of building towards this new or moving towards this new pipeline today. We've got it running. We're starting to move team products onto it, and I'm optimistic that over the next few months we'll get all of our products converted onto this new system, and then it'll take us to even a higher level of security that we can share with you in future all partner meetings.
Jim, as you're talking about it, maybe talk a little bit also, not just about the things that we're doing, which I know that you've described, but just the cultural change that I think you and that you're leading the teams through. And I think it might be good just to have everyone hear a little bit about not just the things, right, the technical bits and bytes that we're changing, but the mentality shift and the cultural shift that we're putting in place.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, that's a great point. A lot of what we've done over the last 6 months has been around building awareness, around training, around identifying security champions across all the different products. And I will tell you, I mean, from the engineering standpoint, I've been super pleased with the responsiveness of the teams. They recognize that this is our obligation. This is an important element of delivering best-in-class software. And so the teams have really embraced it. And you just take something like the threat modeling that we did, right? The teams, some of them were familiar with threat modeling, but it wasn't something that had been ingrained in all teams. So we had some folks internally who were experts at it that conducted training for all the teams. We trained them on the threat modeling process that we wanted to use and how it works. The teams have really embraced it. It has been not difficult at all to bring this in the process that we're doing on an ongoing basis. And so, just a simple example like that, and code scanning, that's another thing that was inconsistent at the beginning, but now is consistently applied across all of the products. And this new build pipeline, we've got lots of people across the organization that are contributing to that. Not only, this isn't something that's just being built by an outside entity, it's being built by a combined team of some outside security experts that we brought in, but a lot of our own software development engineers and experts. And so it's a joint effort that we see as something that will go on forever as we continue to we'll ultimately get onto this new pipeline, but then we'll continue to improve upon it. And we've already got a backlog of other improvements we want to make as we get further into it. So it's something that a lot of people have really gotten excited about, and that motivates a lot of the engineering team towards building better software. And it doesn't just stop at engineering. I could say our DevOps team, obviously Dave McKinnon and his security team are very involved and are key contributors to all of this. And we've got security experts and security-minded people all over the business that are jumping in to get involved. So.
Excellent. Okay.
And I think it's really important, so I want to make sure that we drive home the point that, we not only do we take security seriously, and we have changed the mindset of security within N-able, within our product teams, within our operational teams. But we're going to need your help in order to really make sure that everything stays secure. At the end of the day, obviously, you depend on us as a software vendor and as a partner to make sure that we're arming you with secure tools that enable you to be successful running your business. But we're going to need your help to do that as well. Obviously, I want to emphasize that it's really critically important. Jim mentioned that we are well on our way to establishing MFA everywhere as a mandatory practice within all of our products. And I know for some of you who may be on the phone today, that has required a little bit of change into how you do business and to changing some of your internal processes. We really think it's absolutely critical that you don't look for ways to undo those options. And I know that some of you have called in and said, well, it makes it really difficult for us to do X or Y. And we're working with you to try and make sure that we have the right work streams in place to enable you to be successful. But we really feel strongly that MFA is critically important given the kinds of things that we enable you to be able to do on your customers' endpoints. And I'll go deeper than that and say that at the end of the day, we actually really want to make sure that you yourselves as partners are also secure. And so I really would implore you to make sure that you are taking those best practices and moving forward as well. Obviously we can give you the white papers on how to deploy our products and how to use our products successfully, but we also need to make sure that, everywhere else within your environments, you are treating security as a top of mind priority. It's not only good enough that you use MFA, for instance, to log into RMM or log into N-central, but it is really important that you use MFA to guard your mail, right? If you're using Office 365 internally or another provider, make sure that you have MFA turned on for those providers, because if an attacker gets into your email and they're able to redirect things and to, change passwords and use those opportunities, there's only so much that we can do to protect you as a software vendor. One of, I'm sure, many of your tools that you were using. So really think about making sure that MFA is everywhere and that you're thinking about it holistically within a security program. I know that our nerds have done a tremendous amount of work in publicizing the ways that hopefully our MSP partners are thinking about security overall. And that hopefully you can use that material to think about, where else in your environment, not just with your N-able tools, but where else within your environment can you be secure and make sure that you're doing the best things that you can. I said, so there are things that we can help you with. Hopefully there's information that you can take from us and apply to the rest of your environment. Obviously, things like spam filters or using MailAssure for your own email infrastructure is another critical step in making sure that that your mail is being protected, that you aren't being phished, and that attackers aren't gaining access to you or your technicians, email to your identities. Because obviously, there again, once they have that access, there's a lot of things that can be done overnight in a relatively quick period of time to reset things in a way where you might not even notice, or even if you did notice, the change would be somewhat subtle and it could be very hard to detect. And so, really making sure that you have all of the basics checked off for your environment is super critical. And we need your help to do that. And so that's why we're taking the time to make sure that we, give you information. Please check out the Institute and a lot of other places with your success managers to make sure that you have those best practices in hand. Again, not only for running the N-able tools, but also for securing your own environments across the board. Together, as partners, we can make sure that you are successful using the N-able tools, successful supporting your customers, and that you yourselves stay secure and are able to be successful. So I just wanted to sort of drop that out and talk a little bit about it, because we've taken time to really make sure that that information is out there and available.
Great points, Mike. Appreciate that. So I think that really kind of winds it up for me and for this section. I guess there's a poll, so please respond to the poll. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our new Chief Information Security Officer, Dave McKinnon, and he'll take it away from here.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim.
give you guys a minute to fill out the poll, and then I will share my desktop as soon as I get permission to do so. Okay, awesome. So I want to thank everybody for joining. Good morning, afternoon, good evening. Wanted to spend a little bit of time talking to you today about myself. Obviously, I'm new at Enable. I wanted to let you guys know who I was. They gave me 30 minutes, so I figured we'll do like 25 about me and maybe 5 about security. But wanted to talk a little bit about myself, about my security philosophy, what we're doing at Enable as it comes to security. John had talked earlier about kind of starting new, starting fresh, and we've taken advantage of that opportunity as we've kind of built out our program to support this new organization and our partners. So to start, a little bit about me. I'm based here in Atlanta, Georgia. I've lived in and out of Atlanta for the last 20 years. I moved here from upstate New York, where there was lots of snow. And when I graduated from college, I decided I did not want snow, and Atlanta was wonderful because they get snow like once a year and everything shuts down. It's awesome. I had the opportunity when I came to Atlanta. I actually security found me. I didn't go seeking security. I didn't know anything about it. And I fell into the Atlanta security market, which, for me was the first decade of my career. I spent time with SecureWorks, and then I spent a lot of time with Internet Security Systems, who was now acquired by IBM. So the IBM X-Force. And I wore a lot of different hats. I had the opportunity I started as a SOC analyst. And when I moved to ISS, I spent time in support, I spent time in engineering, I spent time in consulting. And I had the opportunity to really learn security from a lot of different facets. Because again, for me, security was not something I understood coming out of college. When I interviewed at SecureWorks, I said, I was very transparent. I know nothing about security. And I said, no problem, we'll teach you. And they put me on overnight shifts, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. to read books. So I had lots of time in the beginning of my career to really sit down and understand, one, from a SOC perspective, like what are we seeing from our customers, and then 2 was just reading books, understanding how adversaries work and things like that. More recently, I've spent time, I worked at a company called Cofense, running their R&D department, so very focused on building out next-gen products. And then also, one of the things I built out there was actually their MSSP service. So the Phishing Defense Center, for anybody who's familiar with Cofense, I refer to them as PhishMe because that's what they were when I was there. But starting out that program, getting it built out down in Birmingham, which is where it was based when I was started. And then most recently, I actually joined from another big Atlanta company, which is Turner Broadcasting, also known as Warner Media. So it's Turner, HBO, and Warner Brothers, where I wore a ton of different hats. So I ran SOC, I ran IR, I ran vulnerability management, Intel, security tools engineering, journalist cybersecurity, the whole gamut. It was a pretty awesome opportunity there. We built some amazing programs, which we grew significantly large. It started at Turner, and then as Warner Media became one, we folded out there. And then as that program grew, it actually took over for AT&T. So AT&T bought Warner Media about 3.5 years ago, I think. I don't remember, it's kind of a blur. But Bill O'Hearn, who's the CISO of AT&T, said, I really love what you guys are doing with the SOC and IR teams. Like, I want that. And I was humbled and flattered, and it was awesome. So I had the opportunity to do a lot of building there. I spent most of my career building. And that to me is absolutely important. My team will probably tell you I spend too much time in Splunk. I don't mind that. I love it. I like being in technology. I like being hands-on. And it's something that's important to me. I don't want to be a PowerPoint expert or an Excel expert. So when I had the opportunity to come to Enable, and I met with John, I met with Mike, and met with a number of other folks, the opportunity was very intriguing. For me, there were a few things. One, knowing what happened with SolarWinds, that for me was a positive. Not that it happened to SolarWinds, but it's a positive in that very few organizations know the pain that comes with that type of event. You know, you read about it in the news. I mean, you know, Mr. Clark talked about it earlier. You know, in the news, it's in the news right now, cyber, it's constant. But internally, having gone through that, security was going to be top of mind. So it wasn't going to be a question of, as we made recommendations, as we built this program, as we matured, you know, we could really sit down and do great things, and the company would be behind it. Which for me, you know, I don't want to be just puppet talking about security. Like, I want to do good security. I want to do good things. So I had the opportunity to come over here and join the team. A lot of the values that John talked about aligned with my personal values. So when I talk about my security philosophy, you know, it's very simple. But first is, you know, security is not defined by any one individual or team. It needs to be a part of the company's DNA and considered in everything we do. And I don't think that can be stressed more for any organization. My team doing security monitoring or doing security engineering or architecture, that's great. We need to do those things. But having people across the organization from end to end, I don't care what role you're in, I don't care what you do, thinking about security, thinking about how you secure both ourselves and our customers, and ensuring that, you know, as things happen throughout the organization, that it's top of mind. And that is, it's hard to achieve in an organization. And the reason it's hard to achieve is actually gets to my second bullet, which is security needs to be a partner as we go through this evolution. Now, there's no magic bullet for security. Everybody knows that. And, you know, the analogy I use is you know, it's a marathon, not a sprint. But I've spent a lot of time in my career prior to here. I often call it the shaking hands and kissing babies tour. Security oftentimes comes in, drops a massive hammer, says, "Thou shalt do all these things," and then walks away and says, "Well, the team will go take care of it." And it's a very difficult task for teams to go through. Like, if I were to walk into Jim's team and go, like, "You guys need to do all these crazy things. They're really hard to do. I'm not giving you any resources. I'm not giving you any tools. Go figure it out." That does not scale. So I've been very focused on making sure that we partner. One of the things I often talk about is iterating to awesome. You know, we're going to iterate through these steps as we grow through the different phases of our maturity. And we're going to do it in an attainable manner. What I don't want folks to do is sit down and go, "Man, I got to climb this crazy mountain," because we can't. Because it's a marathon, we need to partner together. So wanted to talk a little bit about some of the security principles. I'm not going to talk for 25 minutes about me. Sorry, that's where it stops. But I did want to talk a little bit about some of the principles we've put into place as we've organized our team, as we've organized our program, as we've spun off from SolarWinds to become the Enable Security team. So from a principle perspective, there's really three specific pillars. So the first is governance. So making sure that we have a risk strategy that is set by a management committee, which is effectively a group of individuals at the corporate level who are setting our risk tolerance. And I'll go into the committee orchestration on my next slide. But really, what we want to make sure is that, organizationally speaking, from the top down, everybody's clear on how much risk we're willing, how risk averse are we as an organization, and it should influence what we do, how we build policies. Additionally, and Mr. Clark spoke about it, is making sure that I have some flexibility in terms of how I can operate. From a reporting perspective, I report to Mike Adler, who's CTO, which is great, but I also have pathways into, whether it be the board, whether it be directly to John. My voice can be heard, and that, from a governance perspective, we've embraced that very early on, and it's extremely helpful. On the architecture side, it's really making sure that we have standards that we're building for best practices, and those standards need to evolve over time. So, like I mentioned a minute ago, how do we iterate to awesome? We don't want to set this giant wall that teams cannot, possibly hurdle over. We want to set hurdles that the teams can attain. And then once we learn how to do that and we get better, we'll build the next set of hurdles. And eventually we end up with a wall. But making sure that we have an architecture team that is building those, building out those standards and also being able to measure them is absolutely critical. And then make sure that we're investing in the right people to build out that architecture, who have backgrounds in the various technology platforms and things like that. The third is operations. So, we talk about, and I've spent a lot of my career has been security operations, incident response, things like that. Making sure that we are doing a good job of monitoring what's hitting us and where it's hitting us and how it's hitting us. And we invest strongly in the teams to really focus on detecting those threats early. I have, my personal view, and I've shared it with John, is, it's not going to be kind of a question of if it happens, it's when it happens. We are going to have a security event where everybody's going to get called. Jeff from marketing has told me that I've ruined his Friday afternoons because I told him most of these things happen on Friday. I can't tell you why, but at 3:30 or 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon, typically if I'm calling, you're not going to be too happy. I apologize for that in advance, but that's just kind of the way it works. But ensuring that, one, we have those communications, and then two, on the operations side is what do we do? The analogy I've used, and it's a Mike Tyson quote, is everybody has a plan till you get punched in the face. Security incidents are a punch in the face. Most and every incident I've gone through, somebody forgets what they're supposed to do. So making sure that we have those processes documented for how do we engage different people, or what processes do we need to follow to do specific investigations, how do we do specific containment, whatever the case may be. But having those things documented so you have that punch list, because your mind is going a million miles an hour. You're thinking about a ton of different stuff, and having those things in place to ensure that we're not missing steps, because obviously if you miss one single step, it could be significant. So from a principal perspective, that's how we've kind of orchestrated or architected the team. As I go into kind of the governance view, so I mentioned earlier about kind of the management committee, and this Mr. Clark kind of laid this out perfectly, because this is very similar to how we architected our setup. So we do have a cyber committee at the board level. So Cam McMartin is a board member that he and I speak as we need to, and we ensure that the board is aware of what's going on from a cyber perspective. And if things are not happening that I feel like need to happen, I have an outlet to route that up directly to the board to get its attention. Separately, we have a management committee. So the management committee includes folks like John and Tim and Peter, Mike, myself. And that's, as I mentioned earlier, that's where we sit down and really set that risk tolerance. We also approve all the policies. So from a policy perspective, as we've become N-able, we've had to draft new policies because we had a foundation of policies that came from SolarWinds, and we've been working to make them our own. And that management committee actually reviews those policies and approves them. And then also risk exceptions. So policies are great. Policies need to be flexible, but there are times where policies are set at a level where we need time to meet those policies, and that's the purpose of why we put in risk exceptions. So the risk exceptions are reviewed at that management committee level, so that there's a visibility of, from a risk perspective, the organizational risk we're assuming. What are we doing? How are we doing it? Because I don't want John to be surprised when he finds out if something were to occur related to a risk exception we push through. I don't want him to be surprised that he didn't know about it. So the intent is to make sure that he's in the loop with everything that's going on. And then we have the Security Risk Committee. So the Security Risk Committee is comprised of a number of different members. So it's got myself, it's got Mike, it's got Mav, it's got Joel, who is our CIO, it's got Kathleen from People, it's got Renee and Jim. And the intent there is to make sure we have all of the critical individuals as it relates to any type of exceptions we're going to be putting through. Everybody should have a voice at that table, and everybody has an ownership stake in the exceptions that are being put through. So nobody can say, well, I didn't know this was happening, because we sit and discuss it every 2 weeks. What's been put in, we review the request, how long it's requested for, why, what compensating controls can be put in, et cetera. All that happens at the risk committee. So it's another section of the security governance that we put into place with the intent of ensuring that security is visible at all levels. And if and that can get cascaded down. mentioned earlier about kind of how security is set up in our organization. I know Jim talked about it a bit, and I wanted to go, I've talked about my pillars. I did want to go a little bit more specific on the things we focus on, and then also some of the other areas, because again, security isn't just our team. We're not the only ones doing security. Security needs to be integrated across the organization. So ensuring that, Jim's team is involved, ensuring that Joel's team, on the CIO side from an IT perspective is involved. It's a community effort. It's something that we all need to work on. So if you take my teams, I'm going to start at the left here from an ops perspective, but security operations. So, having 24/7 eyes on glass to monitor events that are happening in our world is absolutely critical. It's kind of a barrier for entry. Everybody who needs to be responsible at security needs to be doing this. And having processes in place for what happens when those things come in. If you get a phishing email, how do you handle it? If you have, unwanted software on an endpoint, how do you handle it? If you have some sort of advanced, malware on the endpoint, what do you do? So having the security operations center in to do that initial triage, and then having an escalation process up to the incident response team. So really getting into the, just understanding, identifying what it is, understanding how they got in, understanding how to contain it, how do you recover? I mean, if you kind of go through the IR steps, having a team who's there to really do that technical deep dive and understand what's occurred in our world, how bad is it, and what path do we need to follow to recover? And then also threat intelligence. So when you think about, and I don't talk about threat intelligence in kind of the classic sense of atomic indicators, like, IPs and domains that you get in threat feeds, they're good. It's kind of basic blocking and tackling. You need to use it. But I look at more as adversarial modeling. So if you think about TTPs, so tools, tactics, and procedures. So, when we were talking, Ms. Clark earlier mentioned about, tactically, threat actors now, it's kind of a blend, doing identification of what specific threat actor attacked your organization is extremely difficult. It's a maturity level that very few organizations do well. I candidly don't think many organizations need to, because at the end of the day, what our focus really needs to be is what tactics are they leveraging, and what is our detection ability for those tactics, and how do we make sure that we're protected. So from an intel perspective, making sure that we're focusing on that. One other thing that falls under ops, which actually isn't on here, and I should put it on here, is really the PSERT function, so the product security function. So when we get reports in from a partner or a third party about a product vulnerability or something like that, that comes directly to my team. That ops team has I will say, from a process perspective, it's an extremely strong process has been in place coming out of Tim Brown, what he had built, where everybody knows what to do. It's a process we've tested regularly. We know how to engage the right engineering teams. We know how to assess the risks that are associated with vulnerabilities and really prioritize them so that folks are aware of, a vulnerability gets reported, how big of a deal is it? And I don't say that to minimize. Anybody who's reported a vulnerability to us, thank you. But I also view not all vulnerabilities are created the same. A vulnerability which gives you the ability to do something nefarious without authentication is far different from, we need to update a package. So that PSERT process also sits under the security operations team, where they will take things in, they work them through, they engage engineering, they do the coordination, and we work to ensure that we can get whatever improvement we need to make. So whether it's code change, whether it's, updates to the OSs, et cetera, they route that through. The second pillar is architecture, so security architecture. So Jim had mentioned before on the threat modeling exercise, our teams are involved with that. We need to be. We understand from a tactical perspective, what are these threat actors doing? We want to make sure that we're helping, the engineering teams as they go through those exercises. They also set those standards. So I mentioned earlier, having standards for what does good look like. And again, using the same analogy, iterating awesome. So this is what good looks like for this iteration. And then once we hit it, we're going to move to the next iteration. And that's what good looks like. And we move upwards. And how do we measure that? So from a tools perspective, how do we start measuring, what is our cloud compliance with our policies or things like that? So tools also falls under architecture. And the third pillar it's governance. So classic GRC, where we have risk tracking. So again, I talked earlier about the risk committee, where we meet every 2 weeks. We discuss the risks that have been submitted. We do policy reviews. We work through that process. Awareness. So how do we make sure that folks are getting aware of how to engage security? They're aware of current security threats. How are we phishing our users? So the active phishing program, to make sure that users are identifying fish, and if they don't, how do we train them? The intent is not to make folks feel bad or feel like they're subpar as it comes to detecting these things, but the real intent is to help them become more aware. Making sure that the policies are all in alignment. They're being reviewed annually as ISO requires, whatever the case may be. Running all the compliance programs as we go through our ISO certification as Enable, ensuring that is on track. The same as we start to go down the path of SOC 2, which is something we're internally discussing as kind of a next step for us, and from an iteration perspective. Third-party risk. So as we bring on new vendors into Enable, how do we make sure that, one, what data are they handling? Two, are they handling that data safely? What type of risk do they introduce to our organization or even our partners, and from a data perspective, to ensure that we're protected and they're doing kind of the right things as it relates to security. And the last piece is BCP and DR. So you think about business continuity planning and disaster recovery. So what are critical apps? How do we make sure that we have a plan in place to recover should something bad happen? Again, mentioned it to Joe when I first started. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. On the product side, and I know Jim has already talked about some of this, but there's really two facets. So there's the product operations from a build process perspective, ensuring that they have secure builds and everything in there is being done with security kind of in the forefront of everybody's mind. And then on the architecture side, that secure by design, having security champions embedded in security teams, having that local resource, which to me is absolutely critical. Like having somebody who sits on your same team, who is a trusted advisor as it comes to security, is absolutely critical, because what you don't want to get in the way is egos. Like I'm scared to ask this question because I don't want to sound dumb. It's, if you're having coffee, or when we all go back to an office, I guess having coffee, you can ask that sidebar question or ask for feedback. And, there's a trust there, there's a vulnerability there, which is absolutely critical. And then on Joel's team, on the CIO side from IT, making sure that we have a secure infrastructure. That as we've moved away from SolarWinds, one of the, for me, it's really been a great step for us, is we've not kept a lot of the systems. It was, we moved, we deployed new systems, we shifted OSs, we moved to a new cloud environment. So making sure that security was kind of infused at the forefront, and Joel has been a huge champion of saying now is the best time for us to do it, because it's new. These changes, that people will accept change because we've become Enable, and working with that team to ensure that our infrastructure is secure, ensuring that we have security champions in terms of they're thinking about when users are making requests, how does security be factored into this? It's not uncommon for the director of IT to ping me and say, hey, we've got this thing, can you just take a look at it? It sounds like a weird request, just want your thoughts. And it's a great partnership we built to collaborate. And then application security, making sure that from an application perspective on the biz app side, that security is infused. I mentioned a little bit about, as we built these new environments, how do we start to measure that? So it was relatively simple. We took the CIS benchmarks, and we sat down and really focused on, the three big areas that we have. So the first is Azure. So we moved a ton of infrastructure into Azure over the last, 3 or 4 months. That meant moving lots of different services that were provided, building a lot of new services as relates to Enable, and making sure that, as well as all of the M365 environment we have, how do we make sure that, from a 2FA perspective, having that stood up, or from, PowerShell, making sure that's disabled, like not users can't just use it. Whatever the case may be, but leveraging CIS benchmarks to understand where do we rank? What level of risk are we willing to accept if we don't meet a certain benchmark? Does it stop our business from functioning? Is it a change for users? And really talking about that internally. It's a candid conversation about, how do we need to function as a team? How do we need to function as an organization where security is at the forefront and the business is still successful? So we did that for Azure. The same holds true for AWS. You know, across N-able, we have a lot of AWS accounts. We have AWS accounts for all the various products, and then there's multiple tiers. So whether it be dev or prod or QA, you know, making sure that of all those accounts, one, they're separate, but two, that they're consistently deployed, and then three, that they're monitored. And I'll go into monitoring in my next slide, but ensuring that as we built out all this new infrastructure, we've had it protected really from the get-go. And the last is Equinix. So Equinix is a vendor that we host in, ensuring that, you know, as we deploy new equipment, new servers, you know, whether we backup or mail or whatever the case may be, you know, we're measuring that. And with that, we're also monitoring that. How do we make sure that, you know, our AV agents are getting dropped? How do we make sure that we're getting logs from those devices? So both, it's kind of the baselines, but the second half is from a security perspective, like, how do we make sure that we are secure? And I wanted to give some insight, and this is a very busy slide, but, you know, what does that framework look like? Because there's a ton of moving pieces, and that's okay. There needs to be. There's a lot of complexity to all organizations. I know you all get that. But if we start with the cloud layer, so, you know, from a cloud perspective, you know, the things I worry about with cloud is, you know, obviously one is cloud vulnerabilities, and I think the other is cloud configuration. You know, vulnerabilities are bad, but a misconfiguration can burn you just as bad as a vulnerability. So if you think about, if you have RDP open to the world and you have, you know, and you have that box sitting out in AWS, you may or may not know it's getting brute forced if you don't have logs from it. So one of those, that's an area we've made a significant investment in a tool that actually scans our entire cloud. It looks for vulnerabilities, it looks for configurations, and that tool actually automatically, as it finds highs and criticals, will pipeline that into our Jira suite to get to the appropriate teams, the vulnerabilities as they're identified. So not that I don't want to be the middleman, like I want to be a partner as our teams work through this, but I also need to get it to those teams quickly so they can see what the risk is and we can pester them to go fix it. So that's an investment we made earlier this year for the cloud, and that covers our AWS environment, it covers our Azure environment, and it gives us visibility into how does that entire ecosystem look. And then if you take just from a logging perspective, you know, whether it be CloudTrail, whether it be GuardDuty, whether it be like Azure Event Hub for Azure AD and for Azure in general, having all that data, event data, to help us with investigations. So all that data goes to we've invested in Splunk from a SIEM perspective. So we're leveraging Splunk for all the data to go in there, which it gives us the ability to pull in massive amounts of data, but also analyze it quickly. And it also gives us the ability from a 24/7 monitoring perspective to give that, you know, tier 1, tier 2 monitoring team visibility into everything that's happening. So as we, you know, deploy threat content to understand what those risks look like, the SIEM is very powerful to give us that data. The second tier is really application security. So think about code vulnerabilities, the things Jim was talking about, general AppSec, putting a WAF in place. Those things are absolutely critical for us to, one, be able to observe when they're happening, so having visibility into them. And then the second is how do we make sure that we can respond to them? So if somebody's attacking a product or a platform, you know, on the WAF level, if the WAF controls aren't meeting what we need to from a containment perspective or a blocking perspective, how do we make sure that we're getting that visibility and able to make enhancements to our policies? So all that data also goes into the SIEM. Also in the container space. So, you know, for containerized hosts, they're a little bit more difficult from a security monitoring perspective, because when you bounce a container, all of your host forensics goes away. So how do we make sure that, one, we're using the best, you know, foundational containers we can? Two, how are we identifying vulnerabilities? And then three, how do we make sure that we're getting visibility into them? So we've made investments in the tools to help us see what's happening in containers and able to reduce risk as it exists. The fourth is hosts. So you think about my laptop or any of the laptops for anybody at N-able that they have, but how do we make sure that we're identifying vulnerabilities on those hosts? How do we make sure that we're properly patching and pushing a patching regimen? How do we make sure that we're hardening and doing kind of least privilege on those systems? So the combination of data that's coming out of our VM tools as well as our Intune deployment gives us the ability to really measure what our host level risk is. And then we have other investments in things like EDR and advanced AV, secure gateways, just to have that total host visibility. So as things happen on endpoints, whether it be they clicked on a phishing email or they went to a site with a drive-by, whatever the case may be, we have that level of visibility. So all those logs also come into Splunk. And then on the network side, it's much the same. So scanning our network, understanding what's from a legacy network. So you think classic infrastructure, not cloud vulnerability. All the data goes to the same place, but two different challenges. Getting visibility into that, understanding what boxes on our network. If we're not doing authenticated scans to them, why not? Like, how do we need to fix that? Make sure that we do have visibility into it. Making sure that we're hardening the network. So there's no reason for something, for two boxes to be talking, then we can do least privilege in terms of access. We're a Palo Alto shop, so taking advantage of some of the next gen firewall information that are benefits that we get from that. And the last is identity, so leveraging Azure. So we have Azure, we have two-factor from a control perspective. It gives us great visibility into the applications everybody's touching, and visibility into when things are occurring. So if we see password sharing attacks or anything like that, all that data goes to the SIEM, and it gives us the ability kind of at the bottom to properly investigate that. So being able to get that 24/7 eyes on glass, have the tier 1 and the tier 2 analysts review it, understand, and really from a SOC perspective, the intent is, SOCs really say it's bad, it's not bad, or I don't know. And typically it's when it's bad or I don't know, it will get kicked up because somebody needs to make an evaluation to say, hey, this is bad or not. So going through that process, working it up to our team so that we have, they understand how to go investigate it. And we have plans in place that we test. The IR plan to me is absolutely critical. It's, we did a tabletop a couple weeks ago, and some of the feedback I got was it was intense. My team actually told me I was very amped up, and I took that as quite the compliment because I love this part of it. Like, it's my favorite part of my job. Not that I love incidents, but making sure that we're all prepared for what we're going to do should they occur. So that at a very high level, I hope it helps give us some visibility into kind of what we're doing, what we've been doing from a security perspective. If you do have questions, please feel free to reach out to me. It's david.mckinnon@n-able.com. I'm happy to answer questions you have, but I did want to put it out there. If from a session feedback, I welcome your feedback. If there's more you want to hear, please let us know. And with that, I will hand it over to Mav and Mike.
That's excellent. Thanks, Dave. And as Mav and Mike are coming in here, folks, I wanted to jump in quickly. I hope that so far what you've seen today and the way that we've structured the event, bringing you some of that insight, from John on what the business is doing and the investments that we're making. Obviously, as well, then understanding and listening to Richard from Good Harbor on, those 5 components were amazing. And then, jumping into what is done through the development life cycle today and how we've built out that structure into what Dave's doing around the infrastructure. So really trying to give you that 360 view into the business. And we hope that you're finding that helpful. And now as we jump in with Mike and Mav, they're going to take you into that future component of what we're looking to do moving forward across the RMM platform. So I will hand it over to both of you, gentlemen.
Excellent. And so while Mav gets the slides up, I think David transitioned it perfectly. We'll talk a little bit about some of the roadmap items and some of the things that are coming in here. And I wanted to have Mav come in and talk about it as our group vice president for product management. At the end of the day, our product managers are responsible for driving out the priorities in our roadmap, and we'll take you through a number of pieces as the slides come up that are coming in. A couple of themes I want to sort of highlight as Mav gets started. Number one, we continue to provide new options and new services for you to take to your customers to help secure yourselves and your customers' environments, and do that in an integrated fashion. And we're going to give you some information about that. We're also going to talk a little bit about changes that are coming into the ecosystems that we all manage and how we're going to be responding to that. And Matt will highlight that. And then some additional things and changes that we're making across our product portfolio, as I said, to help strengthen the security of our portfolio as we move forward. So with that, let me turn it over to Mav and let him get started, and we'll go from there.
Great, thanks, Mike. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I've got a lot of really cool stuff to show, and a lot of it will build on what you heard from Jim earlier and from Dave, obviously, but definitely want to take a minute to really dive into the roadmap. And before we do, we'll always show our favorite, safe harbor slide here. But one of the things I wanted to specifically talk about, in addition to all the security enhancements, because this is a roadmap session, is all some exciting announcements we have in a couple areas of the product, and then I'll go into some of the product-specific roadmaps. And as always, the Success Portal has a deeper dive on each product. I think they're 30 minutes to 45 minutes, depending on the product, that the PMs regularly keep up to date. And so if you want to go deeper on anything, suggest you check that out. They're always posted there and kept up to date. So with that, let's jump into some of the exciting things coming out. So the first big thing is I'm proud to announce DNS filtering customer preview for N-central. Irina showed this off at Empower if you were there, and she showed that we were working on it, that we were about to be ready, but now I'm happy to announce that we are ready to get that customer preview started. For those of you who haven't heard, we're working on a new integrated user security offering that'll make it easier for you to deploy enterprise-grade content filtering for your customers. We're in preview now, expect to be GA in N-central in November. So that's what's going on there. We do have a pool of customers that have signed up, raised their hands and said, I'd like to be included in that preview. We'll be reaching out to you in the next couple of weeks to bring you into the program, get your feedback, get that deployed. But if you haven't raised your hand previously on that, or you just want to make sure you're in the bucket, send me an email and I'll make sure your name's on the list, and we'll follow up with you in the next couple of weeks here. I'll connect you with the right person on my team. After we do the N-central integration, we'll be looking at integrating this with RMM. And there were some questions in the chat already on this. When we launch DNS filtering into RMM, we will not be removing web protection. So I know some of you are using web protection today. If you're using it and you're happy with it, that's great. The comparison I make is very similar to what we did with EDR, where we continue to have a lot of people very happy and successful with our AV solution and continue to use that. And then many of our customers are choosing to upgrade and go to the next level with EDR. Very similar story here with web protection and DNS filtering for those of you that might have it. So just a note there, since there was a question earlier. The next big thing I'm happy to announce is an update on our client analytics solution. This is another key feature we get, that Ben Saranowski gave an update at the last Empower. It's based on Microsoft Power BI, so it should look familiar to many of you. As we were looking at how we can solve this problem and talking to our partners, Power BI came up again and again and again. And since it's embedded Power BI, you don't have to be a Power BI expert, right? You can still use it, get familiar with it, and then over time, as we build up more of our data warehousing offerings around it, you can also look at how you can do data append and getting that other places. So super exciting. This is going to come out later in the year on N-central first again, but something to look forward to, and really excited to get that out finally after a couple of delays there. All right, moving along. Our Apple strategy is a quick update here. If you're an RMM partner, you've seen some amazing progress in our support for macOS. So hopefully you've felt that we've really been investing there, have been really delivering on that Apple first strategy alongside our Windows strategy. For N-central though, we haven't been able to deliver that as we wanted to, right? Many of you know that if you're an N-central customer, but we're close. Frankly, if you go back to Jim, everything Jim talked about, we had to do a reprioritization and focus our efforts on making sure that we're building securely and that our products are as secure as possible. And so we absolutely shifted resources there. Hopefully none of you are surprised or none of you disagree with that prioritization decision, but we are getting close now, getting back on track to delivering these awesome capabilities and really delivering on Brian Best's vision of being that Apple first vendor. So if you've ever heard Brian Best talk about this, you know that he's big on this strategy and he's done an excellent job internally of getting everybody excited around why we need to do this, how we need to do this. And we really intend to demonstrate that in the N-central product, but really across all the products in the portfolio when Apple ships Monterey coming up. And so we're excited to be at market at the same time when Apple does that. But not to worry if you're a PC user, we still have some of those, right? I'm actually on a PC and I have a Mac as well, but on a PC. And we have been playing with the latest version of Windows 11, Server 2022 in the lab. You can see in the screenshot here, this isn't a mock-up, this is actually a device in our lab that's running it. Some of you might be kind of playing around with the latest version of Windows in preview, so you're getting comfortable with it. If you're not, I suggest you do. You wanna make sure you're not surprised here, particularly because of how Microsoft plans to deliver this update through Windows Update Service. So make sure you don't get caught off guard. We wanna make sure that all of our products support it when Microsoft drops that GA version. So know that we've got that in mind. It's something that we think is absolutely critical. Historically, we've not done a great job of being at market at the same time as some of our key partners such as Microsoft and Apple, and that's been a key change for us. So hopefully you'll see that later this fall.
I think, Matt, and let's pause right here and just sort of talk. I want to just sort of emphasize that point. Both for Mac and for Windows, we fully recognize that you may not even be in control on these OS upgrades, right? The operating system upgrade paradigm has shifted dramatically over the last couple of years, and so we are prioritizing and are going to be enabling you to be successful with this new paradigm. Whether it is in iOS, right, that we've all gotten used to those upgrades just coming out and being available, and within a week or two, everyone's starting to push the button. We know that's going to happen with Monterey. We know that's going to happen with Windows 11. And while you may want to slow your customers down just from a risk perspective, from a security perspective, from a training perspective, we want you to know that we are going to prioritize making sure that the support is there in the tools that you use to run your business so that you can go at the speed that you want to, not at the speed that you're dependent on us to be ready for. So it's a big change in I think in our approach and how we're considering these things, and that's why we're comfortable showing you these things, and know that we're actively working to make sure that you will have the tools you need to be at the level of support and at the speed of support that you need for your customers. Sort of a little bit of a dynamic shift, and something that I think that again, another one of those cultural shifts that we've probably had to take ourselves through, but we know is the right thing for you and for your customers.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, great points. All right, now I'm going to get into the product-specific enhancements. And when we look at some of these, obviously, this is kind of some of the meat that a lot of folks want to talk about, or what are you doing for me now? The theme of this presentation and this whole session, right, is the security focus. And so while I did just talk about a couple of the new features, I want to make sure that you understand that a lot of those features are A, focused on security, but B, just a small fraction of where our engineering resources are being dedicated. Most of our effort is being spent on the things that Jim talked about earlier, right? That's where the main thing and main priority for us is to make sure that those products are secure and that we're following best practices as deeply and as thoroughly as possible across the portfolio. And so most of these features I'm talking about are related to those security enhancements versus some of the other features. But there's some other little nuggets that we're working on across the board as well, of course. So some of the things that we've been talking with partners about for a very long time, speaking of best practices, are things like network segmentation. So ensuring that the console and the agent communications can be split out and secured appropriately. This has been a top request for a very long time, and it's something that we're actively working on now to make sure that you can provide the best security as possible from a segmentation perspective. We're also, speaking of some of those little nuggets, continuing to work with Microsoft on deepening our relationship around Intune, around the M365 portfolio overall. It's something that's really key to us to ensure that we're really able to matter where it's messiest, as John likes to say, where you've got a lot of this complex technology and we're simplifying it and ensuring that that functionality is enabling your business and then that allowing you to be more powerful versus slowing you down. And then third, speaking of those little nuggets, usability. So, and I have this on both the RMM and the N-central slides because you have all been awesome with your time and with the feedback you've given us in these show me sessions and these research sessions that the UX researchers have been conducting. And I just want to make sure you understand that that information gets to me, it gets to Mike, it gets to John, and we use that information and that feedback to help prioritize and make the right decisions for everybody. And so we know that there can be a long time between when you tell us something and we can actually deliver that. Sometimes just because it's so early in the process, it may feel like a long time to you, but we absolutely use that information to prioritize our enhancements and to make sure we're building the right things for you. So please continue to deliver that great feedback and know that it is making changes. In Empower, we actually talked about this in one of the UX sessions and showed how some of the feedback from some of you directly showed the features we built in N-central to make it easier to scale out and to manage lists and certain filtering options. So hopefully you're feeling that change. Hopefully you're feeling your voice represented in some of those usability enhancements. Next, more kind of tactically, the N-central admin console, right? We're making updates, getting rid of that so that we don't have to have this area of the product that's really creating some risk for us. SSO, probably the top request day one since I started in this business, and the thing that I have the most conversations around is Azure Active Directory and moving to our common SSO platform. This is taking a lot longer than we would like because it's such a key critical part of our security architecture that we need to ensure that it's deployed securely on-prem and that we're able to use that effectively. But that's a key thing for us. I know it's a key pain point for you. We hear you, and I'm sorry it's taking so long for us to get there, but we need to do that right, and we need to make sure that it's as secure as possible. So we have a lot of that key that's kind of coming. It's a high priority here. We're working to get that delivered. Also, one of the cool things that I think will help across all of these things, and again, Mike, you talked about culture change and how we're approaching things differently. On the N-central side, we're going to a little bit more of an agile delivery process. So you're probably used to these a couple of times, really big releases, and there's a lot in them, heavy upgrade process, big impact to your business. We're trying to chunk those down to smaller delivery bits. Again, very modern process for software delivery, so that each chunk is a lot less of an impact for you. So you don't have to do as much planning around those updates, and that the upgrade process itself is actually a lot easier and more streamlined, and that there's more information available to you as you have those updates, so you know the impact and can plan it out, but also just that it's a smaller amount of change that you're consuming. And so smaller, faster release cycles, we believe, will actually allow us to deliver on a lot of this feedback much faster and allow us to be more agile in our approach to security, right? Because if you only have 2 releases a year and you find a vulnerability, yes, you can get a hot fix out, but it's going to be a while before the majority of the base actually has that fixed version. And so by going to these smaller bits and making that upgrade process easier, we hope that it'll allow you to be as secure as possible, ensure that deployment of N-central has the latest and greatest security enhancements. And then finally, one of the major themes we've been working on for the last year specifically is scaling out N-central, so that as your business grows and you go from 20,000 to 50,000 to 100,000 devices and users under management, that you don't have to split out to different N-central services, right? That scale, that horizontal scaling is key for your growth and for ours. And so that's something we've been working on. Again, a lot of that is back-end architecture changes, so you don't really feel those as directly. And some of those are in the UI, right? Some just managing a lot of things is different. Managing 50,000 devices is very different than managing 500 devices. And we want to make sure that N-central helps you scale and do that effectively. Mike, you want to add anything on any of these points here?
No, I think you covered it. I said you'll notice that there's for the partners that are out there, this is a pretty interesting mix. There are some features that Matt described on the previous slide, Mac updates, analytics, right? So there's some big features in here. This is the work that really covers the underneath the cover changes that will, frankly, impact our partners, but also we think is really critical to helping improve N-central as a product. So both sides of that, both the feature side and some of the under the cover work.
Yeah, no, great, thank you for that. And one of the things I didn't mention, it came up in the Q&A, and I think Jim referenced it briefly. It's not on this slide, so I wanted to call it out, was, we talked about files and specifically around automation manager policies and ensuring that a malicious actor doesn't get in and then deploy something to your endpoints and your agents. That's something that we're looking at a couple of different solutions to ensure that that mechanism is as secure as possible, that you're requiring MFA, that you're getting notifications when those changes are being made. And so there's a lot more behind this. There's a couple of really exciting things we're working on and hope to share with you soon that specifically Sarah Foley, who's answering some of the Q&A questions, are making a public document about what we believe from a product perspective should be included as a baseline at a very granular level, at the level that Dave spoke about earlier, that Jim spoke about earlier, so you all can know how this very specific changes we're making in the product, such as the one I just mentioned. And so we're looking forward to sharing that all with you very soon. All right, RMM. So again, we talked about N-central a lot. We talked about RMM. We're going to talk about backup in a moment as well, and then a lot of the other products. But very similar story in a lot of ways, but there are some differences because of how they're deployed, their architecture, where they come from. So within RMM, one of the things that's really important for me is with all products, but with RMM specifically, is App Command and a legacy MDM solution we have. As we go through and do our threat modeling, we look at our products and we look at where there are areas for increasing security. One of the things that's important to do is assess what features are being used. And if a feature isn't being heavily used, then we need to look at whether or not it makes sense to have that functionality exposed, because the more functionality, obviously the greater the attack surface. So we look at opportunities to come back and prune some of those functionalities to ensure that we're not exposing unnecessary risk. And so with our App Command feature or our legacy MDM solution, we're going to be removing those features because we don't think the benefit to you outweighs the risk of those functionalities. And so we're looking at other solutions long-term to address some of the pain points that those help, but that will be done in a way that will allow you to successfully scale and grow and use those in a secure manner. So just heads up there, there's some comms that have gone out and we'll go out around that, but let you know that as we look at products, it's not just about what new features we can add, what features we can enhance and bulk up, but also what features we can remove, because that's really important, making sure a product is healthy. Also, speaking of making sure products are healthy, one of the things we're looking at across the portfolio, but you'll see first in RMM, is a more standard agent update mechanism. So today, different products treat their agent updates differently, and we want to get more consistent so that you can know what to expect when we're doing agent updates. When we're forcing agent updates, when we're giving you options for managing the updates of those so that you can make sure it's aligned with your policies and with your customers. We felt a lot of pain from you when we had to switch out the SolarWinds signed agents. When the SolarWinds certificate got revoked, that had a knock-on effect on us because we were using that signature to sign our code, and so that made us have to go back and do a bunch of agent updates. And so we want to make sure that when something happens, in that case there wasn't a malicious factor, it was just a change control that required a lot of overhead from you. But if there is something that gets detected, we want to be able to work with you to get that deployed as quickly as possible and not have agents that are out there that are running on XP, which today many of you have, and we know you've probably been working with your customers for a long time to try to get those machines turned off and get them updated. We're hoping this will help you with that process by ensuring that we only have products that can communicate with secure versions of TLS in the system, and that you've got the right information there to go to your partners and help them have that conversation, to go through your customers, to have that conversation around making sure they're using secure operating systems and not creating risk to their business. And again, I mentioned on the last slide, but thank you to everybody that's been providing great UX feedback here. Continue to do that. And if you haven't been in a UX research session, send me an email and I'll connect you with the team, and we'd love to get some feedback for you. We have various topics that we send notifications out and ask to be, if people want to be included. You're under no obligation at any time to do any of those, but if you just want to be asked for feedback, shoot me a note and I'll make sure you're on those updated lists. All right, some of the features. One of the things we hear from N-central customers a lot is that they love the patching solution, and we hear from RMM customers that they feel like there are some gaps. We really want to get those gaps closed and have one common patching system for all of our customers, no matter which platform you're using. And so that's a big initiative for us. And as I showed on the Apple strategy slide, that's not just for PCs, that also accounts for Macs. And so that's something that we really believe will be valuable for everybody. Again, back to a security perspective, ensuring your patches are deployed, getting good inventory on those patches, knowing where you might have missing patches so you can quickly remediate those. One of the things I'm most excited about, probably outside of the Intune story, is our cloud story and where that is going. We've been doing a lot of research here. We've been talking with a lot of customers about how we can help them bring their, I think John said it earlier, from the closet to the cloud, help them with that journey. And so looking at building out those native capabilities from Azure specifically now, eventually AWS, GCP, other clouds, but the big focus for us right now is Azure, bringing that visibility so that as you do that migration, as you do that lift and shift, you don't lose visibility, and that you can create the right visibility for the right people in your organization. So it's not just the one global admin that can sign in and see everything, but that your level 1 technicians can get the right visibility and actually conduct those operations, can see what's going on in the right context, bring you better subscription data so you can understand where your costs are going. There's a ton here. This is a whole topic on itself, but it's one of the areas I'm excited about. We're probably going to see it in RMM first before in Central, but again, you'll notice a common theme where instead of building for RMM or building for Central, we'll build out that functionality and make it available in both. And that's really hoping to accelerate our delivery and support of newer technologies and a support of these faster moving changes. So really excited about that. Again, if any of these topics strike a nerve with you and you're curious about, please let me know. I'd love to talk with you and connect you with my team, because these are really key for us. Looking at attended take control, we've heard from you that it'd be much easier if you could have that capability right in the context of RMM. It's something we think makes things a lot easier. So we have a lot more ideas percolating around there that we're excited about in simplifying that technician's ability to go service those clients, attended or unattended. And then automation. So we know many of you use automation, but we also know many of you don't. And if you look at the number of, if you look at your business and how you scale your business and how you are successful, obviously the more users and devices that each technician can manage, the more successful your business will be. And so and also from a technician perspective, the more powerful you are, the more you can reach out and manage more things, the more fun that is, right? If we take out that laborious, repetitive task and really augment that technician so they can just really be more effective, you're gonna enjoy your day a lot more as opposed to sitting and waiting on processes or systems and waiting on information. If you can have your easy button and automatically take care of things proactively, and when you need to react quickly, gather the right information, that's really key to us. We know it's key to you. We want to continue to really build and really, I would say, take to the next level our automation story, because we have really powerful capabilities. Marc-Andre and the nerds do a great job of getting a lot of content on automation playbooks and our automation policies, but we know it's not super easy for you to find them, and we want to do a better job of making that easier out of the box, but then also providing more powerful capabilities for it to just not require you to spend so much time on. And so it's an awesome area for improvement, but we have some amazing capabilities that if you know, you know, but many of you don't. And so we want to really bring that back up and make sure everybody is aware of those capabilities and using them in a secure manner. All right, so I'm going to switch to our data protection portfolio now. So I'll use that word data protection when I'm talking about our backup products, because it's no longer just about our backup and recovery files and folders and servers, right? We've expanded and added support for Microsoft 365, so cloud backup solution. We're actively working on our continuity story to ensure that if you do experience an outage, you can recover very quickly and get your business back up and running. So those are all awesome capabilities that we're really excited about delivering, and it's something that really feeds into our entire data protection portfolio and story versus and all built upon a really strong foundation of our backup product. That product we get great feedback from you all on that. They feel like it's easy to use, it just works, you don't worry about it, and when you do need to restore, it's not a big pain. So we really appreciate the feedback on that, and we're continuing to invest and ensure that that product just works, that it's fast, that we've got the right points of presence around the world so that wherever you are, you can have that speedy recovery. One of the big things that we're looking at with this is just tying it more deeply within the rest of the portfolio. So if you are an N-central or you are an RMM customer, you're not having to go back and repeat a bunch of information, add customers across multiple sites, add devices across multiple systems, right? We want to make sure that you're getting a common experience, and it feels like when you buy our backup solution that you're actually buying it from the same vendor that your RMM solution exists in. And so that's something that we're really working on a lot to ensure that we've got that common integration built out, and specifically around billing, but also around our, your client selector, your site trees, all of that, to make sure that we've got a really solid story there. Very small feature, but when we hear a lot of requests for that second bullet point, adding support for an external email recipient, stuff like that, to make it easy for you to get that information to your clients without having to add them into the backup console. Right? These are good examples of some of that user feedback we get in those UX sessions. On our cloud backup story, I talked about M365 earlier, working on adding Teams. Just noticed that should be capital T, adding Microsoft Teams and increasing our retention, and always working on speed of recovery, backing up, of course, but also recovery. So when you need it, you can get it quickly and not have to wait a long time. That's really important, as was discussed multiple times, probably almost every session earlier, right? When you have an incident, you have an outage, how can you possibly recover quickly, and making sure you know what that process is. And so spending a lot of energy making sure that is as seamless as possible. And I'll do one more slide of roadmap product enhancements to show you what we're doing from a security perspective to ensure that these products are all secure and that they have the right level of functionality for you. Again, we have deeper roadmap slides in the Success Portal. Please go there and watch them. If you're not happy with what you're seeing there, ping me. I'm always happy to jump on a call and have my team jump on a call with you and give you an update on where we're at. Note that, again, our primary focus is the work that Jim laid out earlier. That's where we're investing the most, to make sure our products are secure, they're stable, that we're building in a clean environment, that we're resolving any issues quickly that get discovered, and that we are really following the best practices across the board, like I said, depth and breadth of the implementation of those, and continue to make enhancements to those existing features. That's really our focus, particularly through the rest of this year. But again, there's some great little features in Passportal, sharing for sites. Editable column headers might seem like a small thing, but if you're a big Passportal user, you'll understand why that's so important and why it helps the workflow just be that much better. Adding docs in our mobile app, right? So we're continuing to accelerate our investment in Passportal. With Passportal, again, just like all products, we've really taken a look at the threat modeling in the back end of our system to make sure that that product is secure, particularly given what Passportal contains, right? Our Mail Assure product, Mike mentioned earlier, making sure you have a good mail security solution and having that comprehensive. We believe that there's a lot of value add if you add the Mail Assure product on top of your M365 accounts, because we're getting a lot of different data and really rich content in those threat feeds to ensure that you're as secure as possible. And again, even things like new roles, so this protection reports role allows you to have more granular access of who has access to what information so that you can secure it properly. And expanding into new regions. So we're expanding into South Africa here. Again, that global expansion is a key theme across multiple products in our portfolio that we're excited about. Take control, again, anything that's got an agent, making sure that Windows 11 and Server 2022 are up to date and working, no problem. There should be a table stakes, but frankly, we've not done a great job of that in the past. And so we want to show you that culture change by acknowledging that, pulling this forward and showing you how important it is for us to ensure that, as Mike said, you can move as fast as you want, that we're not holding you back because we haven't added support there, right? That's really a key cultural change. Always focusing on performance on Take Control and looking at working on a public cloud video upload. So if you want to drop it in an S3 bucket, you can. So a lot of cool stuff there. And finally, our PSA, MSP Manager. A PSA is really powerful when it can connect to a lot of different things. And so making sure that the APIs are rich and full and are able to be extended is really key for us. So that's one of our top priorities with MSP managers, making sure we've got the right set of APIs that are extended and that allow you to do what you need to do and connect it into your business. And then some other activities like the warranty tracking field, the events-based workflow. The APIs in general are actually something that we have a good set, but across the portfolio, we need to do a better job of ensuring we've got a great set of rich APIs, and a lot of that goes to how we change about how we think we do product development, how we build features, and then what gets exposed publicly versus privately. All right, like I said, there's a lot more here, but I wanted to give you a little bit of a taste of some of the things we're working on and some of the exciting things we've got coming up as we, again, keep security top of mind and ensure that we're really at the level that we want to be in and that we're really industry leading in our implementation of those best practices. With that, before I wrap up, Mike, would you like to add anything to the group here? All right. I'm going to flip to the poll now, so take a moment, everybody. I think we're able to get pushed out here, and we will see what everybody thinks here about this session. I appreciate the time here. Hopefully it was insightful to what we're doing, and again, acknowledge some of the things where we've been talking about, trying to get some of those capabilities in, and hope to get them in very soon for you. And how we're prioritizing is really, you know, Mike talked about the culture change here. One of the big culture changes that he's been driving as CTO is making sure we have those clear priorities and everybody understands what those priorities are, and less about the timeline, but more about, are we working on the right thing right now? And so that's been a really great change for the organization, and hopefully you'll start to see some of the results of that as we deliver, again, more frequently and with clearly stated priorities. With that, I think, David, I will pass it back over to you, and you can close us out here.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Mav, and thanks, Mike, for that. I think all of this coupled really well together today, and I was excited to see, you know, the flow and the way that we delivered this information. We really hope all of you as our partners have found that valuable as well too. You know, this is regular communication that we want to keep coming towards you, and we will do that, and we will have these regular all partner meetings. Next year we'll have our Empowers back in person, is the hope, and we'll look forward to having all of you there as well too. But we understand, you know, we can't get the global base into one room, and so we have to deliver to you in the best way that we can these types of sessions so that you understand what we're doing and that we have that ongoing. Again, I hope everybody found it useful. I want to thank all of our presenters today for their time and the information that they provided. But more importantly, I want to thank all of you, our partners, for taking the time to attend this session. I hope that if you have questions, you will reach out, let us know, get in touch with your partner success manager, with myself, with any of the presenters, and we'll be happy to get you the information that you might need. Take some time, fill out our post-event survey. We want to ensure that we're delivering this content to you in the way that you want to receive it. And this allows us to be better each time that we come to you with this type of session and different ones that we're going to do continually ongoing to ensure that we're communicating with you on a regular basis. So thank you very much, everybody, for taking the time today, and I wish everybody well. Take care.